Alright, so hello everybody. It's been a while, so I figured it might be a good idea to actually go ahead and explain what the Linux directory structure actually is, what each folder does, what its purpose is, and the main reason why I want to talk about this is that if you want to understand Linux and how it works, you actually have to know where each file is, because Linux is a, um, let's call it, let's say it has its own logic where everything is a file essentially. So your printer, it's a file. Your USB flash drive, it's also a file. Your scanner, it's also a file. So what I wanna do in this video is try and explain where each and every file is. I won't go into too much detail, but I will try to explain it in a way that even a Windows user should be able to understand. This video might be longer than any other video in this series, or one of the longest even, because there's a ton of stuff we have to go about in order to understand everything. So for those unaware, I'm actually talking about this folder right here. It doesn't seem like much, but there is actually quite a lot in that. So I do have some notes actually. I don't really know it like from the top of my head, so I have to write down some notes. The thing is, it is cool that you know most of the folders, but really the folders you should really like worry about is the media and home folder most of the time, and sometimes the mount folder, but that's about it. You shouldn't be worrying about anything else. I just wanted to get this out of the way, because a ton of people think you have to understand really where everything is. In one of my videos I went over this part, it was with creating directories and files, so make sure to look at that episode to understand what this is. I don't have to go into any detail. I also explained all of this before it, so today we are just focusing on these things right here. Now bear in mind that there are some Linux distributions that have their own specific folders. I can't really think of an example, but well, not now. Look, the point is, if you understand the Linux structure, you can pretty much understand everything that you need in order to navigate in Linux like a pro. So, yeah. Oh, one thing to note, it uses something called a tree structure, which works in a way that your root, which is this / thing right here, is basically, as I said, the root of the tree, and then you have different branches kind of branching out, and this is what it actually is. You have different folders, each one of them has their own purpose. So the root folder basically acts like the main drive that you can think of as the C drive in Windows. You have when you open your C drive in Windows, you essentially have all the other folders, and then you open a folder inside that and it has a bunch of other files. That's the same kind of methodology here, but instead of a C drive or a D drive, you have just one directory called root, and every device and everything you plug in, for example a storage device like a USB drive, it will be over here under media. Now I don't have a USB drive to show it to you, but if you were to plug in your USB drive, it will show up under / media / and the name of the USB drive, for example. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So let's start off with actually explaining each and every folder. So bin is essentially a place where all your binaries or your applications will get stored. The same folder is also in the user folder. I'll get into that later. But essentially what you need to remember is that all your programs are stored in here. That's what you essentially have to remember. /boot, as the name suggests, contains files related to booting the operating system. So I would recommend to keep this folder out of your site, like keep it in there but don't touch it. I would recommend that you do that. /device, now this thing. So to explain this, I'm gonna have to do something. So let's actually list out what it actually contains. So as you can see, /device has all of this stuff in here. One thing I want you to remember is that /device contains essentially every single thing that's used on your computer. So just remember that. What I could do, in fact, is run this through a pipe of sed. I don't have sed. Dang it. I'm not sure what command it was, but wait, sed 11q. No, it doesn't work. Do I have to separate it? Oh yeah, I have to separate it. Okay. What this does, it gave me this thing. It lists out just a few things of using that. So let me just clear this out and do this again. But that's what you have to do if you're working with this. So as I mentioned, the directories, and here is the contents of the device folder. The first 11 essentially, or 10. So in the device folder, which you can see up here, this is what it contains. So basically, as you can see, your CD-ROM is a file here that's pointing to somewhere else. The same thing goes for your CD-RV, for your bus, for your block devices. Everything is in here in the device folder. So yeah, that's that. That's what I wanted to explain essentially. That's devices. So etc, which is the next one in the list, is one of the important ones because all your configurations are essentially stored there. Your sources list is actually in there too. To prove to you that I'm not lying, I'm just going to list out the first few items. So as you can see, your apt folder with the sources list is in there. What we can do is we can actually use our Linux knowledge. As you can see, your sources list is actually in there. So that's the etc. Basically in etc you have all your configuration files. So that's that. The home directory, as I mentioned, is one of the important ones that you need to know about if you're starting out with Linux. Reason being, one is the most used directory in pretty much every distribution. So what you will notice is that it has just one folder, depending on how many users you have. I have just one user, which is my account, and it creates a folder for each account created on this machine. To prove to you that it is actually my folder, I'm going to list the first 11 items in my folder, which, if you remember from one of my last videos, regularly set 11q thing, that this is my file essentially. My folder. If you remember from a few videos back where we did all the hardware info stuff, that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's get back actually. So let's prepare this. So that's pretty much, also your home directory contains like all your downloaded files and stuff, but that depends on your Linux installation. So yeah, that's the home directory. Another one that is quite important. Now, let me mention one thing. These are just files. These are links. We don't care about these for now. All you have to know about these is these ones are used for building your operating system. These light blue ones. That's all you need to know. I'm not gonna go into any detail about this. Essentially, what you have to remember is if you delete these, your computer will not work. I'm not gonna do it because I did it once on accident when I was learning Linux. I was like, I don't need that. That's a bit too big, and I removed it. Whoops. Okay, so that's that. So yeah. Next one. Library or lib and lib64. Now, the lib and lib64 folders, they they contain pretty much all the essential files for your library. The libraries are basically files that are being accessed by other programs, and they give each program the things that it needs in order to function properly. You can think of this as a library you go to get more information without having to own the book itself. You can just go and read it up there, but you don't have to own it. So essentially you can package a application. I'm trying to explain it as simple as possible. So have an application and you don't have to load it with all your files. You can just have a library file do that for you. If the thing you need is in a library file, you don't have to put it in the folder itself. You can just call the library itself and it will work. If that makes sense. Again, the Linux directories is something that's extremely complicated for newbies, for people who don't understand Linux, but I'm trying to do my best here to explain everything to you. So the next one in our list is the lost and found folder. The lost and found folder is essentially, oh, okay, we have to use sudo in order to view that. Did not think this through. So essentially, the lost and found folder, as you can see, it's empty, but what it is used for is for recovering files that have been essentially it's used for recovering files. The files that you recover are actually moved into that directory. Essentially, if any file is corrupted, it will be placed into that directory. So you could attempt to recover the data if you need. So you have a file that gets corrupted, it gets sent into this directory. Just wanted to mention that because a lot of people were actually angry because their Linux install removed some files. Most likely just look into this folder itself with either that command that I just showed you or without the set11q. The set11q just lists only a few items from each folder, just wanted to mention that. So yeah. So the next one in our list is media. So as I mentioned before, it's used for loading up your media devices. Essentially what I mean by this is your USB flash drives, your external hard drives, and your CD-ROMs and stuff. I don't have a device mounted here, so yeah, and I'm running this in a virtual machine. If you're going with this along with me, you could try and mount a USB drive into that. I'm not gonna do it for now, but if you were to mount your USB drive, you could view it in there. Actually, I could do that. So for demonstrative purposes, yeah, you heard that Windows sound, didn't you? Connect to virtual device. So, you can see it's still empty. Why is it empty? Well, let me just mount it. nearest the device, and there's my flash drive, so I'm gonna mount it. / the SD1 on / media. Only root can do that, okay. So if I were to list the contents of the media folder, you'll see that it has all the files from my USB flash drive. So remember those folder names, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, where is it? I'm going to unmount my USB drive from here. So I'm going to go to removable devices, and where is it? We're going to disconnect and connect it to host, essentially connecting it to my computer. And oh yeah, there we go. And I told you to remember those file names, but essentially the Arduino, ANET board, MO final, and articles are in here, as you can see. So yeah, those files are in that. So, and they are in alphabetical order, I think. Yes, they are in alphabetical order. So yeah, so that's that. I just wanted to show you that it will look something like that. Ouch. I think I just moved my camera, didn't I? Yep, I moved my camera. I'm sorry. I can't get it straight at all. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's the media folder explained. Alright, so the MNT folder itself, to show you again what I mean, we're going to list out everything in here again. The next one in this section is MNT. MNT is pretty much an acronym for mount, so every single device you mount, you should mount there. For example, in Ubuntu, in disks, which is a disk utility, if you set it to mount automatically, it will be mounted over here with its ID, which is a string of numbers and letters. You don't have to remember it, just remember that MNT is used for mounting drives. That's all you have to remember pretty much. Alright, so the next one is OPT. It's essentially a directory that contains, well, it's a directory for optional software packages. What I mean by that is you have some software installed on your Linux installation, and it has some extra software, but you don't have to use it. So it will be put into the OPT directory. Pretty much what you can do is you can put software in there if you want to execute it whilst installing it. I'm trying to simplify as much as I can, but it's not easy because the OPT folder is kind of a obscure folder. I'm sorry, I just have to sneeze, but I just can't for some reason. Okay, so essentially it's for optional directories. It contains like optional software packages essentially. I don't want to go into much detail, that's pretty much how it is. One thing I have noticed that the proc folder is actually completely empty. Well, the reason is that it contains the processes of your computer that are currently running. It's essentially a snapshot of them. So, what we can do is we can list it out. It may not seem like there's nothing, but there are actually a few things running, but they're not going to show up for the user because proc is a directory that contains all of your running processes, and each process has its own name. The name of the process is essentially numbers. So what I can do is I can run this through a grep command to search for something that contains 1 in its name. And what it does, it highlights it. So grep is essentially for searching things in a directory or file. So when I typed in this command, what it did, it listed out all the files inside the proc folder, picked I believe 10 or 11 of those, I don't want to count it, I'm lazy, and it looked for anything in this output that's related to 1. So for example here, if you look all the way over here, there are some processes labeled 1, 10, 105, 11, 12, 123, 13, and 14. So that's that. So next is the root directory. The root directory is a directory for the root user essentially. You can think of it as the home directory for your user, but it's for the root user itself, and you don't need a special directory for that. So that's essentially your root account. When you run a sudo command, it will use this directory to do things. So if you're looking for the file that's being outputted, just make sure to look into this directory. It's going to be most likely here. Next one is the run one, if I remember correctly. Let's have a look. Let's just remove the sudo to have it all color-coded to have it a bit more fun. Okay. So the next one is, run is the next one. It's a dark blue color, just trust me. It's called run. You will see it's auto-completing on its own. So what run is, it's essentially an application state folder. It saves the state of each application essentially. So if you have an app running, it has its own states, and the states are saved in here. So yeah, I guess that's like it. Like there's not much that should be explained here. I don't want to go into detail. I'm trying to explain it as much as I can, so that you know what to look for if you're looking for something. So yeah, that was the run directory. Next one is sben, and sben is kind of a special case. Sben contains, should I put it, libraries for the system administrator essentially, and what it does is, those are libraries. Those are libraries that are used by the operating system's administrator. Essentially, in Linux it's called the root user. So these files are used by the root user. So just remember that. What's next? SRV. So SRV is a folder that contains service data. As you can see, we don't have pretty much anything in here, but it's actually data for services provided by the system. So if you are using, for example, an HTTP server for a website, you will most likely find the website's directory inside the SRV folder. If you are going to use Apache, which is used for creating websites on a Linux system, you will find it in here under the SRV directory. Next one is that green highlighted one at the top, which is TMP. TMP, as the name suggests, is used for storing temporary files. The thing about temporary files is, let me just list it. Why did I press it twice? So TMP stores temporary files about your system, essentially files that the system has to use in order to do pretty much anything. like these are the files that the system accesses all the time. One important thing to remember, you don't have to wipe this. After each reboot it gets wiped. I learned it like a year ago and I was like blown away. So I always thought I had to clean it like manually. Don't do it, you will break your OS. Let the OS do it for you. Don't do anything stupid, just let it do it all for you. So that's that. So, and I believe one of the last ones essentially is okay, so we had 2 months ago. My gosh, that's tiresome. So the last two. So the next one is the USR. The USR basically contains files that are essential or even not essential for the user. This one is used for storing your personal executables, files and scripts. For example, you see, as I mentioned before, there was a bin folder in the original root directory, but inside the user directory there is another bin folder, and that bin folder is used for storing your custom scripts. So if you have a script you want to put it inside the bin directory. Same goes for the lib directory and sbin directory and src directory and share. All of these are your directories, so if you have a script, a file, or executable, or a library file, put it in here. If you want to use it in a program, make sure to put it in here, because this is a directory designed for your files, for your system files. So if you're writing a library and want to test it, put it in /user/lib. Put it there, nowhere else, so you don't break your system. So yeah. So and the last one on our list is var. Now var is pretty much a special case. What it does, it contains all the variables used by the operating system. For example, there should be something called what was that? If I grab it, I think that Python should be there. It isn't that. Essentially, it contains variables, so no. Oh yeah, that's that thing. Okay. So I did not work out as I wanted to. But essentially, what you have to remember is it contains all the variables used by the operating system. So yeah. There's also a log directory. What it essentially is used for, log directory. It's used for system logs. So if something fails, it puts it in a log, and you can open up the log to look at what has been bricked, what doesn't work and stuff. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There is not much else to it. These are all the directories explained. Essentially, I went about this fairly quickly, but it's not a problem. It's actually okay, as long as you understand everything else. Let's just do it with pseudo Python, no matter color coded. But yeah, that's all you have to remember about the Linux file directories. Again, I went over this as simple as possible without hopefully confusing you. I hope I did not confuse you. Also, one more thing, the swap file, which you can see right here, is essentially the swap file that works the same way in Windows. So I wanted to mention that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Again, it might have been a little bit confusing. I'm sorry. But it is fairly important to understand Linux directories themselves, what they contain and what they are used for. Because sooner or later, we're gonna have to go in here and do some stuff. And it's really important to know which ones to go to, so you don't waste a lot of time looking for stuff, which isn't really helpful if you are trying to be as efficient as possible. So yeah, you guys, that's it. Hope you liked this video. I know it might have been a bit more on the talkative side, but that's because I had to go through each and every part to explain everything. And yeah, just make sure to stay awesome, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.